Honey, sometimes when you go to sleep, you go on a little walk. And sometimes you talk about a place called Silent Hill.
Christoph Gans's 2006 Silent Hill adaptation is a fucking masterpiece. It's not only the benchmark for bringing a video game story to the big screen. Outside of any qualifying statements like being a great horror film or being a great adaptation or anything like that, through its command of atmosphere, excellent performances, a stellar script, and peerless production, Silent Hill earns its place as one of the most affecting and outstanding films of all time when it comes to pure experience. There are so many elements that help to achieve that, and I believe each and every one of them deserves the intense praise I'm going to heap onto them. First of all, Gans had great respect for the source material, which is obviously critical with any adaptation. He was inspired to not only take the story of the game and build his film's narrative on that, but also to find places where exact recreations of moments or camera movements could be brought over, most noticeably in new protagonist Rose da Silva's first outing in Silent Hill, but also to populate the film's score almost entirely with music tracks from the first 4 games. There was no need to try and invent a fitting score, no opportunity for hubris to take over and have the team think they could do better. As much as Silent Hill is known for the mechanics of its town, its monsters, for its foggy atmosphere, it's known just as well, if not better, for its music, primarily written by much celebrated composer Akira Yamaoka. To leave these songs out would have been an easy mistake to make, but was cleverly sidestepped in a move that not only demonstrated the aforementioned respect for the original series, but recognised the power of what was already there. Silent Hill itself is obviously the star of the show. Despite a narrative shift to change the snow to falling ashes, a change I love by the way, the town from the game has been done absolute justice in how empty and decayed it is, how lifeless it feels and how paranoid it makes you. It brings to life that bizarre feeling that's barely been attempted by any other franchise, where you can hardly see 10 feet in front of you, finding your way as buildings and landmarks suddenly come into view, listening to something moving about in the middle distance, and being unsure if you even want to know what it is. A staggering amount of work was put into treating the town of Brantford, Ontario to make it believably look and feel not only like a place that had been uninhabited for 30 years, but like a place that had been victimised by a devastating coal mine fire, a tweak added by screenwriter Roger Avery based on similar events from real-world incidents in mining towns. For the record, Avery is a body of work that features writing for true romance and pulp fiction, so if you're the kind of snob that turns their nose up at game to film adaptations, maybe don't be so quick to discount the talent on show in some of these productions. The Otherworld's been adapted just as fluently. It's as rusty and ugly and oppressive as it needed to be, again with help from fitting music from the games. It might have been the most important part of the puzzle to get right, and the production team and set designers did an unbelievable job. A fucking peerless job, recreating Silent Hill's more explicitly hellish side. They even found a place to put in my favourite Otherworld feature from the first game, the wacky windmills. We're treated to a third version of Silent Hill in Chris's visit to look for Rose, and see the town as it actually exists now in the real world of the film, just as decayed and abandoned, but without the fog and monsters. And even a fourth version is visible in certain flashbacks to Alessa's childhood, where we see the town at the busy height of its existence, when both the hotel and the school were in pristine condition. This meant that certain sets had to not only be dressed up to 3 or even 4 times, but dressed astonishingly well by what's likely the single best production design team to ever work in the film industry. In the Path of Darkness making of feature for the film, production designer Carol Spear talks at length about the vision and the effort behind all of the set design, and clearly highlights her focus on texture and set design.
I put all the sets together and just to create the texture. I have a passion for movies with texture, and texture just comes with the aging of sets. So I like sets that can have some age and also some history to them.
She wants you not just to see this world, but be capable of imagining how it would feel to the touch. We all know how rust feels, and how dust and mould smell, and the deliberate aging of everything we see in the foggy Silent Hill have that quality akin to knowing what certain injuries feel like when an on-screen character suffers them. Someone stubs a toe or loses a nail, and we wince because we can imagine it. And similarly, Silent Hill jumps out of the screen because we can feel it. and no set is more affecting in both its appearance and the scale of its creation than the church where Christabella and her congregation seek safety from the outside world. The production team actually built a whole church interior from scratch, from floor to rafters.
I walked into it and I had a visceral response to the space. The degree of detail and specificity evoke an emotion in you, being in them as an actor.
That painting at the back isn't a print. An artist actually came in when the set closed for the day and painted the entire thing by hand.
The painting was done by a scenic artist here in Toronto. His name is John Fraser, and he probably spent 3 weeks working on the painting. At night, while we were building the set around him, he'd come in afterward as we went home, and he'd put the lights on and paint away. We'd come in the morning and there'd be a little more built. We used Deborah as the guide for the painting. We didn't want it to be Dahlia, but we wanted it to look like it could have been an ancestor of Dahlia's or Christabella's.
Though they were combined with the church facade with CGI, the stairs they built outside are real too. They even paved a fucking road for the entrance to Silent Hill, built an entire mountainside out of styrofoam cut by hand. It's absolutely mental, and if you didn't watch either the making of documentary or this video, you could easily never have known. You might also have missed that almost every monster in the town is practical, at least for the most part. On first watch I was sure that the film's version of the lying figure was computer generated, but no, it's a guy in a styrofoam ribcage and a big latex cover. He's composited a few times, but he's real. The Grey Children too, our Chinese dancer Yvonne Ng in a costume, albeit shrunk digitally and composited a few dozen times. She actually looked like that on set. The same with the janitor Colin. It's Roberto Campanella, choreographer for the film, with his legs chromed out. Roberto was also in the Pyramid Head suit, wearing 6-inch heels and carrying about the real prop sword. The same real prop sword that was really swinging at Rose and Sybil in the school, when they were really ducking and diving while it was really swinging at the actresses. The sexy nurses were all costume and makeup, again dancers, filmed walking backwards, then played forward, to contribute to their alien movement. This adherence to practical effects speaks for itself. The effect it has on the film is massive, both for the audience and the cast. Good practical effects pretty much never age, because they're not contingent on the currently accepted plateau of what computer-generated graphics can manage. It lends reality to what we're seeing, and increases the weight and effect of whatever's being realised by the production team. And crucially, it gives the actors something to work with. Not that good actors require a physical presence to give a good performance, but having it right there in front of them will boost any performance, even subtly. CGI was used in the film obviously, but in a way that I find pretty seamless. In my many viewings of the film, I've never noticed a clear divide between what was really happening on set and what was being injected in post-production. Having a solid baseline of practical effects to then layer CGI on top of is always going to make the post-graphics go down smoother. For example, having two expertly crafted sets on either end of the CGI Otherworld transition lets it all blend really nicely. Alessa's actress is really, physically there, laid on a hospital bed with prosthetic burned skin and wrapped in bandages, paired with her CGI barbed wire limit break, which not only looks good with the wire moving in this alive yet still awkward kind of way, but with exceptional sound design, helping to sell how it coils and tightens around its victims. The creeper bug enemies are here in full force, and in far greater number than the original game. These are entirely CGI, except, I think, for the wee corpse one of them leaves behind when Sybil squashes it. But with the overwhelming majority of sets and creatures being grounded with their real-world physicality, Silent Hill is evidence for the argument that CGI is at its best when supporting practical work instead of being a replacement for it, and both tools are used to exceptional effect in extracting the horror of the original game and translating it to the film. But on the flip side from perfectly recreating what worked in the game, Gans and Avery knew exactly how to toe the line of adherence to the original, with implementing their own changes. And to me, all of these changes worked excellently, to not only expand the world of the story, but to include Gans' vision when it came to a unified theme. Bifurcating the character of Dahlia Gillespie, the mother of Alessa and religious leader of the Order, into a new, grief-stricken version of Dahlia and the cruel, maniacal original character Christabella cracks the film's potential wide open. Dahlia, once an adherent of Christabella's witch-hunting cult, but now haunted by how her faith led her into Christabella's madness. An outsider in the already isolated Silent Hill, and a great mirror of Rose. And Christabella as a proponent of the expiation of witches to battle against the darkness, cementing her own power at the head of the flock of her ever-fearful devotees. Turning the lead character from the male Harry Mason to the female Rose da Silva, played by the wonderful Radha Mitchell, might seem an arbitrary and misguided change at first, but in the fullness of time, the movie presents a theme of motherhood. Not only demonstrating how good mothers protect their children as bad mothers fail to, as Gans puts it, but the capacity for mothers to self-sacrifice in their attempts to keep their daughters safe. Dahlia watches as Rose accomplishes what she couldn't, not only going through hell to rescue Sharon from the Order, but denying their faith and their God, and believing only in herself to keep her daughter safe. With a male lead playing a version of Harry Mason, there would have been scope for this to appear as a statement that perhaps a father knows better or is more capable, but by maintaining this gender between Rose and Dahlia, Silent Hill achieves a single core statement about mothers and daughters, creating an excellent mirror image between Alessa and Sharon's mothers. The film has been criticised in places for feeling too much like a video game in its structure. Some of the story of the movie does follow a kind of level-based structure, but in my opinion this was carefully handled to not simply feel like a highlight reel of the game's locations. It's made clear by the demon assisting Alessa that Rose has deliberately been put through a test to make sure that she's a good mother, who would go through hell to protect her daughter herself, unlike Dahlia. And going from place to place and facing the many horrors of Silent Hill, refusing to give up no matter the cost, she's proving to the demon that she has what it takes to give this little girl the mother she deserves. It's that theme of motherhood going even deeper. It's odd that, at least in a very small way, the demon actually does seem to be slightly altruistic in how it screens Rose for Alessa and Sharon, although this is secondary to the fact that it's ultimately only using them so that it can find a way inside Christabella's church, a way to circumvent their divine protection. And I love this one scene where that divinity is demonstrated. Christabella takes her followers to pray together, and a huge, impossible light shines through the stained glass windows. I suppose if there's a literal demon in the film, it stands to reason that the demon's wholly opposite number would exist too. But it comes and goes so quickly, without any genuine sense of narrative presence. I've always loved this moment because it hints at something much grander in the world of Silent Hill. It doesn't make the mistake with either of its supernatural forces in giving them specific names or codifying their abilities or behaviour, like some horror films make the mistake of doing. It gives you just enough to not only leave intact the mystery that makes all horror so potent, but to inflame your imagination of how dark, how vast the otherworld of Silent Hill might be beyond just what we see in this film. The movie has so much extra world building, so many fleshed out ideas and expanded character dynamics. One perfect example of this is Sybil's massively expanded role in the story, as a part of the protagonist's journey, instead of just a character they run into every now and then. Laurie Holden delivers a characteristically excellent performance, particularly in her death scene, yet another witch burning, demonstrating not just great design and effects, but yet more spectacle not present in the original game. There's the obvious idea that a piece of work can be special thanks to its simplicity, but to ignore how an already solid narrative can be bolstered, expanded, done justice is short-sighted in my opinion. I get that there's a natural reaction of turning our noses up at adaptations, and I'm definitely guilty of that too. How can any work made after the fact possibly be better than the creator's original vision? How can what worked so well in one medium expect to translate perfectly to another? How are they going to fuck it up? It's a knee-jerk reaction, but it's not unearned by the track record of big-budget film and TV studios. The cracks in Game of Thrones were visible as early as season 4 or 5 for book readers. I haven't seen it myself, but I've got it on good authority that Netflix's Witcher series is absolutely rife with really shit changes. With series and films like these giving the entire pursuit of adaptations a bad name, the answer to this next question might be an instant no for a lot of people, but I want to ask it anyway. Can wanting to improve a work with your own vision be based in something other than boosting your own ego? To see places where a work of art you love could be improved is perfectly natural. It can be a mark of admiration to want to tease out the true potential of a work in an adaptation, especially when the original was among the first wave of games to ever really attempt cinematic storytelling in a fully 3D world, and could only manage so much. The additions and alterations made in the movie are numerous, but none stink of a parasitic attempt to cram a director or writer's shitty new ideas into something pre-established in order to leech off it. In my opinion, every single change from the original game is a welcome one that perfectly melds the original creator's vision with Gans's. One change that I want to disagree with on principle, but find myself utterly unable to, is the role of Christopher De Silva in this film. Gans and Avery were apparently told by some kind of studio executive that there weren't enough men in the movie, and normally I would say that it should be up to the creatives, not the financiers, to decide what a film should be. However, there are so many magnificent moments in Chris's desperate journey to find out what happened to Rose and Sharon that I'm glad his role in the film was expanded. Sean Bean gives a monumental performance, as you'd expect, but just as brilliant as Kim Coates as Inspector Thomas Ducci, who has some of the best lines in the entire film. Their straight-talking conversation in the church orphanage is still my favourite scene in the film, aside from the jaw-dropping climax.
That was 30 years ago and it's over now.
Not as far as I'm concerned.
It's gonna be, city boy. I can put you in jail, or you can go home.
And that's your definition of justice, huh?
Many different forms of justice, Chris. So you got man's, God's, and even the devil's. Certain forms you just can't control.
Ducci's the first person in the film to overtly begin to explain the backstory of Silent Hill's society and eventual demise. He doesn't make it too clear, but makes it obvious enough that Alessa, the woman who Chris believes at this time to be Sharon's mother, suffered at the hands of some powerful religious sect in the town's heyday. It's only later in the film, when the demon reveals Alessa's tragic past to Rose, that the true extent of Christabella's cult's barbarism is shown, with them engaging in modern-day witch-burning ceremonies. They proclaim their purity and their religious unity, as they burn alive a girl who's not even in high school yet. It's a sickening flashback that not only turns the screw on the story of the film, casting a darkness over Christabella's order, who had once seemed to be allies in Rose's struggle, but also fills in the blanks of most of the overarching mystery of the film. Does this flashback go too far with its explanations is the question. Does it give away too much, too concisely? The film's been criticised for having this entire segment act as an exposition dump that sticks all the story in one place rather than spreading it out and having the mystery peel back slowly over the whole film. These criticisms seem to argue that the flashback only takes place because Gans and Avery weren't capable enough writers to tell their story any other way. But I hope that by illustrating my admiration for the film so far, I've been able to convince you that, like every other scene, this flashback's existence is very deliberate. This flashback is the culmination of the test I mentioned earlier. The demon states that learning the true history behind her daughter's existence is Rose's prize for proving herself to be the mother Dahlia wasn't. The demon wanted Rose in the dark on Silent Hill's past as a kind of control test. The further she goes without knowing the truth, the more deserving of Sharon she becomes. Another defense of this flashback is that it isn't actually required for the audience to work out the story themselves. Based on dialogue clues from several characters, it's quite straightforward to piece together that the cult are monsters before we actually see them burning Alessa in the hotel. If you were to remove the flashback from the film, and not that I would want to because I think it's a brilliant bit of filmmaking, the story would still make sense. You could still infer the vast majority of Alessa's experience. There's a lot of subtle and non-verbal storytelling that can help us come to this realisation long before Rose does. Gans and Avery show throughout the film that they have immense talents of non-verbal storytelling they can use whenever they feel like it. On the flip side of criticisms of exposition is some of the finest visual storytelling you'll ever see. When Ducci takes Chris into town to look for Rose, is the first time we get a proper understanding of how the overlapping Silent Hill dimension mechanic exists. Gans makes it clear that Rose and Chris are in the same physical space, but vastly different places at the same time, and he does it without a single word. Aside from the sets being the same place, just decorated differently, and matched with identical framing, the camera work shows us how the couple are right on top of each other, without anyone needing to tell us. It's absolutely sublime direction. Given that a massive part of the game's draw is the otherworld mechanic, you'd think they'd want to make it very clear how this works in the film. But in the entire script, nobody ever explains this, or even really understands it. Nobody says the word otherworld, and nobody ever says the word siren. From visual details and framing alone, we understand that the siren sounds, the darkness falls, and the monsters come out. I've talked a bit about the monsters already in this video, but it's not enough. They're astounding. The best movie monsters of all time. They aren't just a brilliant practical and digital showcase, they also carry subtext of a certain kind in each and every design. Silent Hill 2 is famed for doing exactly this. Every monster somehow represents the issues plaguing either James or Mary or Angela, be they a reflection of illness, sexual assault, sexual inferiority, or emotional repression. And there's been conversation about Silent Hill 1 that the monsters in that game do the exact same thing. This is harder to concretely say, but many people argue that many of the monsters represent Alessa's fear of bugs or dogs. There's evidence against this theory, but whether or not this thematic design runs through the monsters of the original game, it is 100% present in this film. Every single creature represents something that Alessa had a negative relationship with. The Armless Man is a figure trapped in its own body, incapable of anything other than spewing out bile from within, just as Alessa was bedbound after her burning, unable to do anything but project her hate out into the world. The Grey Children are the mob of school kids that tormented her. Colin the janitor is the man who sexually abused her. The little bugs he summons are clearly an allegory for sperm, especially in the scene when they flood in through the hole in the door that Pyramid Head wrenches open. His big sword speaks for itself, with him being a walking metaphor for the act of rape itself, as opposed to Colin being the attacker, crucially being played by the same actor under both costumes. The sexy nurses are the nurses flocking to Alessa, trying to care for this burned child, but being victimised through Alessa's fear and jealousy. In that list there are a few monsters dragged and dropped from Silent Hill 2, and again there's been criticism that they, and especially Pyramid Head, shouldn't be in this story, not least because they could be seen as a desperate mascot play, but they are all contextualised within this narrative. Pyramid Head symbolises rape in Silent Hill 2, and that's exactly what he does in this film. Sexual assault wasn't a theme in the original game, but Gans and Avery understood Pyramid Head and the basis of its origin enough to know that it shouldn't appear at all unless it was thematically established. And in the film, he's contextualised to such an extent that criticism of him feeling like an out-of-place mascot doesn't hold up. The nurses in Silent Hill 2 represented James's disdain for useless, unconcentrated medical staff, and that's what they mean to Alessa too. She made a particular note of inflicting some kind of unclear torment onto this film's version of Lisa, who's crucially made to be very attractive and stylish. And the rest of the nurses are a continued projection of that. They surrounded Alessa in her darkest hour, demonstrating a capacity for sexual maturity and beauty that has forever been robbed from Alessa. I've always loved the story concept that people can be so afraid of something that in their attempts to stop it from existing in the first place, they inevitably force its creation. You see a lot of that in Terminator 2. And in Silent Hill, this same idea is pulled off miraculously. The Order cult seek to battle the darkness they believe is incessantly attempting to corrupt the world they live in. In so doing, they end up hideously torturing an innocent child, opening her up to the influence of the very darkness they sought to destroy, with that child's grudge becoming the impetus for the very destruction they had always feared. It really is like some kind of mythical fable drawn out from the ideas of the first game. And it only came about because Gans and Avery saw the opportunity to realise the potential that was always there by liberally adapting the original story. The film's brand new ending earns its place supplanting the game's several original endings. Instead of Rose leaving with a reincarnated baby version of Sharon, or being consumed by the otherworld like Harry can be, Rose is able to leave with Sharon, but it's unclear the degree to which she realises her daughter isn't really Sharon anymore. She's either possessed by the demon that took her form previously, has had her body taken over by the present-day Alessa's mind, or some combination of both. This non-specificity is handled excellently, as the final sequence of the film features very little dialogue. We're given almost no insight into what Rose is thinking as she returns to a foggy version of her home. And the interpretive nature of this scene matches the interpretive story of the Silent Hill games' stories that's seen them continue to be discussed and disagreed on to this day. Gans has openly stated that he sees the story of Silent Hill 2 as a parallel to the Greek legend of Orpheus, who ventured into Hades to retrieve his dead lover, and the similarities are hard to deny. And in the 2006 film, it clearly draws inspiration from the German legend of Faust, as the message of both stories is that a deal with the devil never ends well. With the ending of this film, Gans and Avery cemented their story's legacy by not providing a clear conclusion for Rose or whatever Sharon has become, leaving open for interpretation the fate of their hero. The story works on so many levels, and every little inch of it can be picked apart and studied. And for all I've said by now, I'm still not sure that I've hit at the heart of why I love this movie so much. I feel like I can't explain it any better than by saying it's not just that I love this movie, I love it in a way that I don't love any other movie. It's so incredibly unique even among the vast reaches of the horror genre. It combines so many different ideas and pulls them off, becoming a final product that's far more than the sum of its parts. Its mixture of looming tension and crushing dread, disturbing, nasty, detailed horror visuals, alongside awe-inspiring, grand, consuming horror visuals. Its grand thematic storytelling, managing a narrative that's as much about the world of the film as it is a character study of the people within it. Its sense of isolation and atmosphere, perfectly balanced alongside extreme gory violence. Its absolutely gorgeous slow burn mystery, giving way to an epic revenge fable. There's far too much brilliance to shine a spotlight on all of it. And I almost feel bad about going on about it like this. It's one of those films I think stands to be somewhat spoiled in your mind when you pick it apart. You might be better off just letting it wash over you, instead of taking the time to analyse it. This is why I won't ever do a full proper video on Porco Rosso, my favourite film of all time, because I refuse to try and put the magic of that film into words. But I couldn't help myself with Silent Hill, because I want to be an ally to it. I want a broader audience to discover it and be amazed by it as I was. And I want to do all these things for one simple reason, because not only is it an absolute masterpiece, but because I sincerely believe that it's one of the greatest horror films of all time.